It started one day when I finally had enough money to buy myself a new gaming console and a few games. I had planned on getting an Xbox 360 for a while now, and my dream was about to come true. I drove down to the electronics store where they sell things like televisions, batteries, remotes, and all of that. I had asked one of the staff members where I could find the gaming consoles, and she pointed towards the back of the store. I quickly headed back there and picked up an Xbox 360 box. I then rushed back over to the register. I asked if there was anything wrong with the console for safe measure, and the man said that it was brand new, factory sealed. I went along with him and bought the console, went back to my car, and drove to the next location, the game store. It was very close by, so it wasn't too bad. I walked into the store and picked out a few pre owned games, then took them to the register. Once I asked again if there was anything wrong, the man behind the counter said that there were a few scratches, but still playable. I bought them and then rushed back to my car and drove home. As I arrived and walked into my house, I noticed that the television was left on. There was a show about the supernatural things went on, so I disregarded it, quickly set up my new gaming console. I went through the natural process of making a profile and avatar. Then I popped my first Xbox 360 game, which was Borderlands. I couldn't wait. I was trembling with excitement. The next day, I had finished the main campaign of Borderlands and was doing all the side missions I might have skipped. At this point, the bandits, skags, and other enemies were hard to beat, as they were around the same level as me, and I didn't have very good weapons. However, it didn't faze me. I slowly got through some of the missions, then stopped for a while to try and find a better gear. This was easier said than done. I couldn't find anything worth mentioning. I yelled at the game, "Damn, why is this so hard? All I want is a strong enough weapon to kill these things." At that moment, I found a supply crate. I had found my orange weapon, one of the rare weapons, and I almost jumped through the roof in excitement. But that made me think almost like I yelled at the game when it happened. I shrugged it off as a coincidence and then continued. I went on to fight an army of spider ants and kill their queen, the one in the Tash Coast. However, there were plenty of badass spider ants and slayers that kept shooting at me. I yelled at the game once more, saying, "Fuck me! Why is this so hard?" And once again, something strange happened. The orange weapon I had, which was a sniper, managed to kill them with one hit. Not even a critical. Even the queen, which has the second highest health amount of the spider ants in the game. This time I was sure something was wrong. I had enough of Borderlands for the time being and decided to play my next game, which was Blaze Blue, the Continuum Shift Extended. I went back to the home menu and put the disc in, once again bouncing up and down with excitement, but the game froze as I tried to load the main game. At that point I heard a voice, "Hello, Teresa Temcev." I jumped back a little, my breath quickening. What happened? I did get my breathing to normal. I tried to forget what I just heard, but then the game voice spoke again, saying, "Hello, sir. Are you there?" This time I freaked out a little more, putting the controller down and rushing out of the room to the kitchen. I kneeled over at the sink, running some water. I ran my hand through the water, splashing water on my face. Then I took a few deep breaths. I must have been imagining something, or it might have been my flatmate. I went back to the lounge room and saw the intro to Blaze Blue had just begun playing. I sat back in my seat and smiled out as how awesome it was. The game froze for a short moment, and at that same voice said, "Help me." This time I didn't take his chance, and I ran through the house as my flatmate's bedroom. But when he was asleep, I pinched to check hard to see if he was dreaming, but I wasn't. I could have been hearing things? I slowly walked back to my lounge room, where the title was showing. I pressed start and set up a storage device to save my data. There were a few graphical glitches in the main menu, but there were some half off colored pieces. I mean, I didn't even see this, but comparing it to the majority of the background, it was off. The game ran smoothly, though some of the commands may not register. but it was fine, as it wasn't too common. Every time I beat an opponent, the game would freeze, audio and video, and I could hear the background sound, as if it was someone gasping for air. I disregarded the fact as my flatmate had light asthma, as his inhaler was close by, so there was no immediate danger. The game decided to play again, but froze. That voice from earlier before coming back. Find the microphone and headset in the box, it gasped. I was curious, if a little bit freaked out. I then looked inside the box and there was indeed a microphone and headset, which had the little strange because I did not purchase one. It wasn't in the box when I opened it, and the first box didn't say it came with one. Reluctantly, I plugged in the controller, strapped it onto my head. "Hello?" I said cautiously, waiting for a response. The voice sighed, then made a sound as if the person was getting up after a nasty fall. "Oh good, you're still here." I hadn't paid any attention until now, but the voice sounded feminine. "Who are you?" I asked again. "My name's Cass. What about you?" she said, suddenly much more relaxed. I hesitated for a bit and then shook my head. "I'm not too comfortable with telling," I said, a faint giggle, and then a sigh. It must have came from this person. "Oh, that's understandable. Oh, I forgot. Would you like to continue playing your game?" My eyes whitened a bit, and I responded with "yes." And then the game started up again, and the character's select screen. "Did I give you a fright?" I shook my head, picking another character. "At first, yes." I managed to stammer it out, and then I could hear another giggle from Cass. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." She was very polite and had a soothing voice. I picked up the comms character and began a new match. Surprisingly, there was no apparent glitching. All the commands I entered happened. The menus didn't have that off coloring like it ran through a brand new game. Was that because I talked to Cass? I didn't know. "What are you doing in my console?" I asked, trying to be polite as possible. "I was bound to you quite some time ago, sort of like a string attached to one person's fingers. I didn't show up sooner because I had no means of contacting you." "What about the other consoles I have?" "They weren't compatible. None had the microphone attachment." I looked away for a moment and then back at the screen, still finding the matches with the computer. "But my Nintendo DS had a microphone." She giggled, then tried to muffle it. "Don't you remember? Your flatmate didn't check to see if everything was working. That microphone never worked." I growled under my breath and then shrugged it off, continuing to play my game. Losing on this match, this Cass, she got bound to me. Since when? Wouldn't I have noticed a change? I shrugged it off the thought and then I turned off the console, then took a nap on the couch. I woke up about an hour later, which is much longer than my usual naps. I turned on my Xbox again and noticed that the opening scene had froze at the last frame. I heard what appeared to be a droning, then the menu eventually started a few seconds later. "Why didn't you say goodbye?" I heard Cass's voice said, a little shocked. I then strapped the headset on and responded, "Sorry, I didn't think of it." He huffed it off and then went silent. While the fact that there was a real person on the other side of the television could actually interact with me in my game, I felt generally sorry. I eventually started up Blaze Blue again and began to play through the story mode. Hours passed and Cass remained silent throughout, even when I spoke to her. She still messes with the games whenever they got me frustrated. It almost did hesitantly. Every time she did, I apologized and heard her sigh every time, as if trying to say, "Yeah, whatever." "Well, I'm gonna go now. It's getting late," I said, as I began to get off. "Alright," Cass finally says after a few hours of solid silence. "I'll see you soon, right?" "Yeah, as soon as possible." I heard a sigh of relief from her, and then I turned off my console and went to my room, tucking myself into bed. During my sleep, I had a dream that seemed to have been a recollection of what happened on that day. With a few details left out, I woke up repeatedly during the night, but by the morning came, I had gotten enough sleep not to be exhausted. I rolled over and hit the snooze on my alarm, then looked behind it and saw another headset, similar to the one for the Xbox. except this was white and connected to my DS. I sat up and stared at it for a while, and then I reached over and grabbed it, starting up my DS and strapping the headset to my head. "Hello again," I hear Cass say in a very cheery voice. "Isn't this great? I found a way we can stay together." I laughed nervously, then responded, "Yeah, I guess." Things were starting to get creepier now. I had this strange girl inside my Xbox and now the same one in my DS. Is she going to stalk me down or do something? Am I in danger? I decided to ask, "Excuse me, but why are you wanting to remain in contact with me so often?" I heard a very faint gasp, then silence for about 5 seconds. Then I heard her stammer, "You've had a hard time with your life, haven't you? You have nobody to talk to in your life, right?" I quickly but carefully put the DS down, took off my headset, taking a few breaths. How did she know? I haven't told anyone. I hear Cass repeatedly saying, "Oh no." I put the headset again, talking to her. "How did you know?" "I just did. I'm not sure how, but it's like I could see your memories." She sounded like a very sincere and a little upset. I didn't know what to say. "Well, I think it's best we think of this later," I finally say, and then Cass agrees. I turn off my DS and then put the headset up on the top shelf of the bookcase. I walked out of the kitchen to get a glass of water, but I was starting to see things. There was a strange man hovering over someone defenseless. I couldn't make out what the face is here or anything, but he struck this person to the ground what seemed to be a knife. I was at my limit. I fell backwards, landed on my backside, leaned up against my chair. My forehead was a little sweaty from worry, so I quickly crawled back to the sink, propping myself against it. Washing my face again, my hands were shaky, and I could felt as if my body were to shut down from pure shock and anxiety from what I had seen. Why did I see it? Who were the people I saw? All those questions needed answering. I took a quick drink and then turned around and leaned my head back against the cupboard under the sink. Closing my eyes, taking slow, deep breaths, I opened my eyes and saw my hands were a little shaky, probably because of the cold air from the open window blowing against them while they were wet from the sink. I dried them off with a tea towel and stood up slowly, looking around. I eventually walked into the room, turning on my Xbox, with no freezing on the menu, and no voice from Cass. Maybe she didn't feel like talking to me after what I had said. I grabbed my headset to put on, talking to the mic. "Are you there, Cass?" I slowly said, trying to hide my trembling voice. The home menu on the Xbox slowly faded to a picture, what seemed to be a pure white room with no window, and a single person in the middle section of the screen, sitting on a chair. It was a woman smiling at me. She stood up and walked closer, waving as she did. "Yes, I'm here," the woman said. Now realizing that I could see her, I smiled slightly, sighing in relief. "Where are you?" I asked. She simply looked around while pacing, while then shook her head. She didn't know. What was it that I saw? That was a memory of one of mine. A man offered me a job that will one day change the fact of communication for a millennium to come. And that was the man you saw? He betrayed me, stuck a knife through my stomach, and watched as I leaned closer, covering my mouth. And when I saw her hide her face, shaking a lot. "No, I shouldn't." I stood up, walking over to the television, pressing one hand against it. The Cass looked up at me, putting her hand to where mine was. She then smiled, wiping away the tears that rolled down her cheek with her cuff. I could see the pain in her eyes. She needed to say what happened, so I asked the rest of the story. Not looking away, she slowly nods and then begins where she left off. "He betrayed me, left me to die as he grabbed something, stuck it in my head. I could feel all my memories, emotions, my experiences, and everything about me flow into this one device. It was like he reached into my being and pulled it out, leaving it just empty, fleshy shell. The next thing now, as I'm woken up by the person, chose to be his next victim. I felt my knees give away as I fell backwards, landing on the coffee table, my eyes wide, simply staring down at the floor in front of me. Caston took her hand away, bringing them to her chest. "I'm sorry. There's no way of preventing it." I looked at the screen, tears welling up in her eyes, and then the screen fades into static. No sound coming from the speakers. Eventually, I came back to the menu of my Xbox, waiting for me to pick up a game. I picked up the headset and microphone and quickly said, "I'll be back soon." Then, quickly, unplugged the Xbox without waiting for a response. I stumbled towards my room, bumping into a few walls on my way. I felt very lightheaded and collapsed onto my bed. My breath escaped in my lungs as I could feel something inside my chest, as if a hand had plugged onto it from outside. I clasped it tightly, my heart racing with fear. I was gasping for air as I saw the lights from my DS turn on from the top of my bookshelf, and Cass's voice yelling, "Hang in there! It's only temporarily!" I eventually passed on my bed, and I felt my eyelids begin to fall. I eventually woke up with my flatmate shaking me wildly, and I could hear his grating voice, but muffled and distorted. I looked up at him as well as a sound that was drowned out by something. My head felt very heavy and it dropped, finally hearing a single thing before passing out again. "I'm sorry." The next time I opened my eyes, the room I was in was a very white room. Laying on the bed was a single glass window and a door right of it, but nothing else. There was 3 people standing behind him, one of them being Cass. I sat up slowly, rubbing my head, and then looked at the window. Where am I?" I managed to say. Then I see Cass smile and clap her hands together, grabbing the microphone on the wall next to her from right below the window. "Oh, thank God you're alive! I'm sorry to say, but you're stuck in the same place as I am. You're just waiting to be bound by someone." I look around the room for a second time. As it became some more focus, it seems to be a single hospital ward, but it was completely quiet. No other patients, no doctors even. I slowly got up off the bed and then walked around, feeling the walls. The door unlocked very soon. "We are looking for the right person," I hear Cass's voice say, and then I walked up to the window, pressing my hand against it. She does mean over mine? "So, did I die?" I quickly ask quietly. Then Cass shakes her head. "Well, no, not yet. Once you do come out of the door, you'll become what my body is, a fleshly shell with no life in it whatsoever." I turned around, my back facing her, leaning against the glass. "This is unbelievable." I heard Cass sigh through the microphone, gently knocking down the glass to get to my attention. "Don't worry. As long as you're here, you can relive many memories of your life as you want, and make new ones." I hear her whisper, as I heard a click from the door to the left. I began to look over it, then back at Cass. "Do I go through?" She simply nods. Then I walked over to the door and slowly swings it open. I take a slow but deep breath. Then I walk towards it, stopping at the last minute. Cass was there, smiling at me with open arms. I smiled weakly, walking through the doorway, letting her wrap my arms tightly around me. Now we could feel the embrace of total obliteration together. I hear her whisper, and I nod slowly, feeling a strange sensation. My consciousness slips from my mind as I begin to feel as I'm falling backwards through the sky to monitor the control panels turn off for a few seconds. Then comes up with this display. Console subject 4, beginning transition of the 4th subject to target 5.